You are losing money right now, not because of a bad investment, not because of something you did wrong. It's happening silently, automatically, every single day, whether you're paying attention or not. Your bank account might show the same number it did last year, but that number will buy you less today than it did then, next year even less. The year after that, less still. This is called inflation. And most people spend their entire financial lives responding to it in exactly the wrong way. I'm not talking about the headline figures governments announce. I'm not talking about egg prices or the cost of filling your gas tank, though those are symptoms. What I'm talking about is purchasing power, the quiet, steady transfer of wealth away from people who don't understand what's happening, and toward those who do. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how that transfer works, and more importantly, you'll have 5 concrete, actionable ways to make sure you end up on the right side of it. But first, I need to explain something about how inflation actually works. Something rarely explained clearly in financial content. Because most people think they understand inflation. And most people are wrong in a way that costs them deeply. Stay with me because the most important part of this video isn't the 5 methods. It's what I'm going to show you first. There is a real, documented figure that captures precisely how much wealth the average person silently loses to inflation over a 30-year working life without making a single bad decision. I'll give you that number in a moment. And when I do, I want you to hold on to it, because it will change how everything else in this video feels. My name is Maya. I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing in this video is financial advice. This is education. Please make your own decisions and work with a qualified professional when the situation calls for it. What I do is think about the gap between what people know about money and how they actually use it. And what I keep finding is that the most destructive financial forces in most people's lives aren't dramatic, they aren't crashes, scandals, or sudden losses. They're quiet, structural, almost completely invisible, until the damage is already done. Inflation is the most powerful of all of them. Before we get to the 5 ways to protect yourself, I need to address something that is almost certainly costing you money right now. It's probably something you've been told is responsible and sensible. Something that makes you feel safe. It isn't, and I'll show you exactly why in just a few minutes. Most people think of inflation as rising prices. That's not wrong, but it misses a point that actually matters. Here's a more useful way to think about it. Inflation is a gradual loss of your money's ability to function. $100 today doesn't do what $100 did 10 years ago. And $100 10 years from now won't do what $100 does today. This isn't a prediction. It's a structural feature of every modern economy on Earth. The question is never whether inflation will exist. It always does. The only question is how fast it moves, and whether your money keeps up. Here's the number I promised. At a historically modest average inflation rate of around 3%, the purchasing power of $100,000 today will shrink to roughly $40,000 in real terms over 30 years. No bad decisions, no market crash, just time and inflation, quietly doing their work. 60% gone while you were living your life. Now here's where most people make their first and most costly mistake. They see that number and think, I need to put my money somewhere safe. Somewhere it won't lose value, somewhere it will be protected. And the place most people choose is a savings account. I'll come back to why that seemingly logical instinct is actually one of the most expensive habits a person can have. But first, let me introduce you to 2 people. James and Lena. Same age, same income, same starting point. Both understood that keeping money under the mattress was a bad idea. Both did what they believed was the responsible thing. James opened a savings account, a standard account at a large bank. He deposited money regularly, watched the balance climb, and felt the quiet satisfaction of numbers going up. He was saving, he was being responsible, he was doing what he'd been told. Lena did something different. She understood something James hadn't quite grasped. A savings account isn't a storage container. It's a container with a slow, invisible leak. Here's why. The interest rate on a standard savings account almost never keeps pace with inflation. In real terms, money sitting in that account loses purchasing power every year. The number goes up, the value goes down, the account looks safe, the outcome is not. James watched his balance grow over 15 years. He felt responsible. He felt prepared. But when he finally sat down and looked at what that money could actually buy, compared to what it could have bought when he started, the number was smaller, not the balance. The purchasing power, the real value of everything he carefully set aside. Lena had built something different, not more complex, not riskier in the way most people fear risk. Just something that understood what inflation actually does and worked directly against it. We'll come back to what Lena built. It connects directly to the 5 methods we're about to cover. But first, let me address something financial content almost always gets wrong about protecting yourself from inflation. Most coverage focuses on dramatic moves, buying gold, shifting currencies, complex hedging strategies that require expertise and time most people simply don't have. That's not what this is about. Because the most effective protection available to ordinary people isn't complex or dramatic, or exclusive to the wealthy. It's just misunderstood, and we're going to fix that right now. Method 1, and this is the most fundamental and the most misunderstood of all. You need to own things that grow, not hoard things, own them. Here's a distinction that matters. Saving is storing value, owning is creating it. In an inflationary environment, those two things produce completely different outcomes. One keeps pace, the other falls behind. When you own a broad, diversified portfolio of productive assets, history shows that you don't just keep pace with inflation, you outpace it. When you own a broad, diversified portfolio of productive assets, history shows that you don't just keep pace with inflation, you outpace it. And it doesn't require picking individual stocks, it doesn't require timing the market. It doesn't require expertise most people don't have. It requires one thing, to start and to keep going. The most powerful tool available to someone with a regular income and a basic investment account is a low-cost, broad-based market index fund, held continuously, contributed to regularly, and left alone long enough for compounding to do its work. We covered this in depth in a previous video. Watch it after this one if you haven't. The mechanism matters. For now, the first method is this: shift from saving money to owning assets, not all of it. Not recklessly, but consciously, steadily, and as early as possible. Lena understood this, James didn't. And that single distinction, saving versus owning, is what created the gap between them. Method 2 surprises almost everyone the first time they encounter it. Real estate. Not in the way most people picture it, buying a property, becoming a landlord, dealing with maintenance and tenants, and everything that comes with direct ownership. Here's why this matters specifically for inflation. Real estate has two characteristics that make it unusually resilient. First, property values tend to rise alongside inflation. The physical asset appreciates in line with the general increase in prices. Second, rental income tends to rise with inflation too, as the cost of everything increases. So does the cost of housing, which means the income generated by real estate grows along with it. That combination, appreciating value and rising income, makes real estate one of the rare asset classes that doesn't just withstand inflation, but often benefits directly from it. REITs let ordinary people access this without purchasing property themselves. They trade like stocks, they're available through standard brokerage accounts. They hold diversified portfolios spread across many properties and property types. They aren't perfect, nothing is. They carry their own risks and fluctuations. But as part of a broader inflation strategy, they deserve to be clearly understood. Most people ignore them, not because they've evaluated and rejected them, because nobody ever explained what they actually do or why they matter. Now you know. Method 3. and this one challenges a comfortable assumption most people carry. Without realizing it, not all of your money should be in assets that move with markets. You need cash and emergency fund. Money you can access quickly without selling anything or waiting for conditions to cooperate. The question isn't whether to hold cash, it's where. A standard savings account at a large bank is, in most economic environments, a guaranteed way to slowly lose purchasing power. The interest rate, typically a fraction of 1% at major institutions, doesn't keep pace with inflation. It was never designed to. Better options exist for the cash you need to keep accessible. High-yield savings accounts offer significantly higher interest rates than standard ones. They fluctuate with the broader rate environment, but in recent years have provided meaningfully better returns than traditional accounts. Treasury bills, short-term government bonds, offer another avenue, government-backed, relatively liquid, and historically far closer to keeping pace with inflation than a standard savings account. And then there are I-bonds, inflation-indexed government savings bonds specifically designed to track inflation. They carry limitations, annual purchase caps, early redemption penalties, holding period requirements, but for the portion of your emergency fund that will genuinely sit untouched for a year or more, they're worth understanding. None of these are perfect solutions. The point isn't perfection. The point is that leaving money in a standard savings account by default, without ever questioning whether better options exist, is a choice, and it comes with a real, compounding cost over time. Lena made a different choice, not a complicated one, just a conscious one. Method first is counterintuitive, and most people get it backwards. In an inflationary environment, not all debt is equally harmful. Here's why. Inflation erodes the real value of debt the same way it erodes the real value of savings. A fixed debt of $10,000 today carries less real weight 5 years from now, because each dollar used to repay it is worth less than the dollar originally borrowed. Fixed rate, low-interest debt quietly erodes in an inflationary environment. You're paying it back with cheaper money than you borrowed. This is not an argument for reckless borrowing. It's an argument for understanding the difference between debt that works against you and debt that inflation is slowly diminishing on your behalf. High-interest debt is a different story entirely. It compounds faster than inflation can erode it. It's genuinely destructive in any economic environment, especially one where your purchasing power is already under pressure. The approach is straightforward: eliminate high-interest debt aggressively. Take a more nuanced view of fixed, low-interest debt, recognizing that in inflationary periods, its real burden shrinks over time. Most people treat all debt the same. People who understand inflation don't. Method 5 is where everything comes together, and it's the one most financial content never reaches. Because knowing about index funds, REITs, high-yield savings accounts, and debt strategy is not the same as having a system that implements all of it automatically. One that doesn't require you to remember, stay motivated, or make the right call under pressure every single time. People who protect their wealth from inflation over the long run don't do it through superior knowledge, they do it through superior architecture. Their contributions to inflation-resistant assets happen automatically. Their emergency funds sit in high-yield accounts, not because they remember to move the money, but because the system handles it. Their debt repayments follow a clear order: high interest first, always, decided once, not reconsidered every month. They remove themselves as the main variable. That's what Lena built. Not a complex portfolio, not an elaborate strategy, a simple, automated, self-running system that addresses inflation on every front and doesn't require her to think about it every day. James had access to the same information, the same income, the same opportunities. He just never built the architecture. And that difference between building a system and meaning to build one is the difference between purchasing power that compounds quietly in your favor and purchasing power that quietly disappears. Before this video ends, here's what I want you to do. Step 1, today, not this week. Look at where your money actually sits right now. Not your investments, your savings, your emergency fund, the cash you keep on hand. Find out what interest rate it's earning, write it down, then find out the current inflation rate. Write that down too. The gap between those two numbers is how much you're losing in real terms each year right now. See it clearly, because until you can see it, you can't do anything about it. Step 2 this week. Identify one place in your financial life where you're saving money when you should be building assets instead, just one. Spend 30 minutes genuinely understanding what it would take to change that one thing. Not to act, just to understand the distance between where you are and where a better structure would take you. Step 3 over the next 30 days. Create one automatic behavior that directly addresses inflation. A single contribution, a single account change, a single automated payment. One thing that works without requiring a decision from you each time. Because in an inflationary environment, a system that runs automatically works for you every day, whether you're thinking about it or not. One honest look, 30 minutes of understanding, one automated behavior. There's something hiding in plain sight about how inflation works. It's not a secret, the information is publicly available, the mechanisms are well documented. Anyone with a basic investment account and 30 minutes of honest attention can access everything we've covered today. It goes unnoticed because it doesn't feel urgent, because the damage is slow and invisible, because the number in your account looks the same even as its real value quietly shrinks. But here's what I want you to hold on to. You are not someone who watches their purchasing power disappear because they don't know any better. You know better now. You are not someone who keeps money in a standard savings account without ever asking whether that choice works for you or against you. You are someone who understands what inflation does, not just to prices, but to the real value of everything you work to build. And that understanding genuinely changes what's possible. The people who quietly protect their wealth from inflation aren't smarter than you. They aren't richer, they aren't more disciplined. They built the architecture before the emergency arrived. You now have everything you need to do the same. The only real question is whether you'll build it today, or keep waiting for a moment that never quite feels like the right time. You will never feel that the timing is perfect. Build it anyway. One question before you go. Think about the money sitting in your savings account right now. Do you know what it's actually earning? And do you know what inflation is doing to its real value at this very moment? Leave your honest answer in the comments. Not what you wish for true. What's actually true today? Because the patterns in those answers shape exactly what this channel covers next. If this video gave you something most financial content doesn't, subscribe. This channel exists to close the gap between knowing and doing, between understanding something in theory and actually building the financial life that understanding should always lead to. And the next video goes somewhere most people never think to look until it's too late. You've seen how inflation quietly erodes what you build. But there's another threat, one that feels impossible until it isn't. What actually happens to your money when a bank fails? Not the reassuring version, not the theory. What really happens? Who bears the cost? And exactly what you need to have in place before that conversation becomes personally urgent. Once you understand it at the level we'll cover next time, you'll never look at where your money sits quite the same way again. It's already there when you're ready. Watch it next.